Ladies and gentlemen, the RX 8000 series of graphics cards powered by AMD's RDNA 4 architecture will launch next year. And in this video, as you probably guessed from the title, I'm going to give you some updates concerning some architecture stuff that I've been hearing and how it will stack up against RTX 50, and also discuss a pattern that has been floating around online as well. Additionally, Zen 5. I've been receiving yet more info regarding IPC and some other stuff as well for AMD's upcoming next generation CPUs. Well, there's a lot of stuff to get through here, so let's just get right to it, shall we? After this message from the video's sponsor. Surfshark VPN is a browser extension and mobile app that enables you to effortlessly change your virtual location and are the sponsor of today's video. You can use this tool to protect your privacy on public Wi-Fi, add an extra degree of security, or change your geolocation to watch your favorite Netflix episodes. As you know, many websites hold content to ransom based on your geographic location, and if you're traveling and watching a show on a streaming service, it might just not be available in your holiday destination. Or perhaps you're traveling and want local news from back home, or perhaps there's simply a movie you want to watch from a different location not available in your home region. With 3,200 plus servers in over 100 countries, you'll find a server to suit your needs no matter where you go. This means you'll never be without your favorite show, and you'll never not be protected online. For those of you who are concerned about security, Surfshark VPN offers a strict no-logs policy. This guarantees that your information will never be collected. Thanks to GPS spoofing, the app can even trick other Android apps that are a little too interested in your whereabouts. This also is great if you're connecting to services on a public Wi-Fi connection if you're on the move, just to give you that extra sense of security if you're doing, let's say, financial transactions. Plus, Surfshark even offers unlimited devices under just a single subscription. You can share your accounts with friends and family at no extra cost, letting the people you care about be protected online without costing them the earth. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee with 24/7 support, and you can try Surfshark without risk and unlock the next level of browsing and security without any worry. Just click the link in the video description and enter the promo code REDGAMINGTECH, that's REDGAMINGTECH, one word, for a Black Friday special offer of 5 extra months for free with the Surfshark One package. Thanks again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring today's video. So we've got a lot of stuff to go through here, so I'll begin with RDNA 4, but I won't repeat all the specifications and information that I released in a video just a week or two ago, because again, I covered it recently and I don't want to waste all your guys' time. But what I will do, of course, is leave the specifications on screen. I will briefly mention that the top end part is 32 workgroup processors and will, roughly speaking, be the same as a 7900 GRE in games. Now this, of course, is still with some time before release, so it's very possible, in fact quite probable, that with some tweaks to the drivers, etc, performance will be a little faster, but it will certainly not outperform something along the lines of a 7900 XTX in raster performance. Ray tracing results, though, are going to be a little different, and I've heard at this point anyway, again with time left for drivers to mature, etc, we're probably seeing around a 10 to 30% gain in ray tracing performance. I've also been told by a couple of sources that RDNA 3's architecture may see some type of refresh, specifically N31. The specifications seem to be identical, but it's going to basically get kind of a re-release for Radeon 8000, because again, N31 is still going to be the highest performing parts. Honestly, I'm not 100% certain on that. I've heard mixed information, but I'll mention that anyway. But let's get to the new stuff, the more intriguing stuff, because a couple of very reliable sources have told me that there's some big updates to the caching system. Speaking about the workgroup processors, I was told that they have a unified caching system which takes a leaf or two out of the book of Apple's M3 Silicon. Now, of course, as with any change to any architecture, it will help different workloads in different ways, but ultimately this is a stepping stone of AMD's eventual plans moving forward. Now, if you've been subscribed to the channel or watched a video recently regarding NVIDIA's Blackwell, I put it out maybe a couple of weeks ago, and if not, I'd encourage you to check it out if you want a lot more detail on the Blackwell architecture, specifically for gaming. But I was told that the SMs of Blackwell are going to undergo some heavy redesigns. Part of the work that I was told about is that there seems to be some unified cache for L0 and L1. I'm not precisely certain of the implementation, and it becomes a lot harder because, of course, there are gaming variants as well as, let's say, HPC. But ultimately, this seems to be kind of a trend moving forward in the industry. Now, how does NVIDIA and AMD's parts stack up? I refer, of course, to RDNA 4. Well, it seems, roughly speaking, the GB 206 and 207 will compete with RDNA 4, with 206 being about on par with N48. Now, of course, I suspect that that will not be the case for ray tracing performance. And it's also worth noting, of course, that at this point, Blackwell's specifications are certainly not locked in for the lower end SKUs. Now, do bear in mind that RDNA 4 is probably going to launch before NVIDIA's mid-range Blackwell parts anyway, and typically speaking, NVIDIA, well, they basically fill out the higher end SKUs and then eventually start to fill out the lower ranks. I've also heard, and I mentioned this in the previous video, of perhaps some possibly chiplet-based flagship, but that seems to be coming later for RDNA 5. And this brings me more to the release timings of all of this stuff, because this is where things become quite, well, let's say, let's just say quite weird. Now, initially, and I believe others have also reported pretty much the same thing, RDNA 4 seemed to be targeting a debut of the midpoint of next year. So let's say late Q2 to early Q3. And a good date, of course, that this was probably implying was Computex, because historically AMD have announced crap tons of things anyway for that. However, a source is telling me that AMD may choose to delay RDNA 4 because of lower sales of RDNA 3's mid-range than predicted. Now, this is certainly something I don't have full confidence in. I'm reporting this as low confidence because, again, I'm hearing some conflicting information. RDNA 5, assuming nothing gets delayed or explodes, is aiming to launch in end of 2025. Now, there is a lot of volatility in the GPU market at the moment. If you've been following the reports of what's happening in China with specific GPU bans, a great example of this is the RTX 4090. It recently got banned because of AI concerns, but of course not everyone is buying GPUs for AI anyway, especially, most people just want to play games. So this has led to cards like the 7900 XTX and 7900 XT now selling really fast. Again, all of this is due to the AI bans which happened in China, exports which is happening against, selling products in China for the whole, AI boom. But this is also becoming more complicated because recently WCCF Tech broke the story of an RTX 4090D, or Dragon. Now, this is basically NVIDIA circumventing the rules by essentially nerfing the specifications to comply with the, terms of the ban. So what this is actually going to mean in terms of sales figures, I do not know at this point, honestly. I got this pretty much very last minute, this information. I basically read it again from WCCF Tech, just literally as I was putting this script together. So I haven't had time to really reach out to any of my sources about this, so full credit to WC. But it does also lead to a lot of questions just in general with what's happening with the market and sales figures. Now, switching gears to something that's not my own information, I did want to talk about a patent. Now, the patent is a distributed geometry patent and became publicly available late November, so about a week ago as of time that I'm recording this. Now, the patent is very extensive, but with any patent, of course, it's not necessarily going to become a product. But given all of the leaks that myself and others have put out, that RDNA 5 is going to be a chiplet-based design. Remember, again, high-end RDNA 4 was originally going to be that, and then it got canned, so now it's RDNA 5. So I think it's a very logical thing for this patent to be a hint anyway of one of the things that AMD are doing. Now, the name of the patent, distributed geometry, actually hints exactly what it does on the tin. Well, distributes the geometry workloads across multiple chiplet compute dies. Now, this is quite an extensive patent, and I won't go through the entire thing with fine detail here because it would just take way too much video time. But the gist is, well, you can actually see on the first page the drawing as well as on figure 5 and a bunch of text in the latter pages which really explain this further. However, succinctly, it's summarized with the abstract text. It literally states, instead of having a central distributor work to the individual chiplets, each chiplet determines its own work to be performed. It then says that the chiplets then parallelize the workloads, and then essentially the whole lot is assembled and chucked together. Well, I'm not being super technical here, I'm using very colorful language, but what essentially this is saying is that the chiplets themselves determine what parts of the geometry they will handle so that it can parallelize the graphics pipeline as much as it possibly can, and then eventually all of this stuff is essentially put together, and then obviously you end up with the final assembled image after, of course, a bunch of other crap is performed. Now, this could be for a number of different GPUs and architectures. I mean, it could even be for APUs, for example, but this is certainly a good, let's just say there's a lot of indicators here that it could be used for something like RDNA 5. Obviously, this is not the only piece of technology that would be required to make graphics work harmoniously, because there is a lot of stuff you have to basically get. Well, yeah, you can't just have work being done by one chiplet that isn't, you know, matched up with another chiplet in terms of timing. Just one chiplet not pulling its weight or work being held up, and there's a lot of, just in terms of scheduling, getting all of the scheduling working, and having all of the caches kind of updating and the data being sent back. It's a lot is basically what I'm trying to tell you guys. Let's just summarize it there. Anyway, I also want to give you some updates to Zen 5 because, quite frankly, I'm hearing so much mixed information regarding Zen 5's performance over the last few months. Now, for one reason, it's probably that some information is just simply wrong. But I also think that because we're seeing, of course, different engineering sample chips, and obviously you're always going to get bugs in one version of the chip. For example, you can have one version of a chip that doesn't have, branch predictor. It could have branch prediction problems. It could have problems with the cache, so the cache just falls over every 20 instructions. The cache is just like, no, I'm dead, sorry. Being serious for a moment, that does make things more difficult, but you also have different workloads. So floating point performance, for example, can just very much differ versus, let's say, integer workloads. Plus, there are just simply different implementations of chips. For example, a server chip, just by their very nature, is going to have more bandwidth. And when we're talking about performance, here I'm referring to IPC. So obviously that means that, well, the best you can anyway, you have the same clock frequency, and you're comparing one chip versus another in terms of just what amount of work they can do with a specific workload in the same time, basically, at the same clock frequency. You guys get what I mean. Anyway, so I'm hearing from a very good source that the desktop chips will do really well in a lot of workloads, particularly when it comes to tasks that don't necessarily pound the memory system. However, because the IOD is identical between Zen 5 and its predecessor for the Ryzen platform, there is, technically speaking, some optimization. I think from memory, I think it's like 400 MTS or something like that, faster out-of-the-box support, something along those lines. Now, obviously, you can, of course, run memory at higher clock frequencies, and that could certainly benefit Zen 5. I'm being told, first of all, I have already leaked some benchmarks for Zen 5, but they don't necessarily hit the memory system as heavily as other workloads would. And I've said that in a previous video, I was told that IPC, in best case scenarios, is going to be low 20-ish%, but those seem to be with heavy floating point operations being used, ideally in a multi-threaded workload. So heavy floating point, multi-threading, that's when Zen 5 is really going to shine. However, integer-only workloads, or where there's just one thread, it's probably not going to do as well, at least according to a lot of people I'm speaking to. However, in the worst case for Ryzen chips, even with heavy floating point workloads, you can get much lower performance numbers, close to single digits, like 10, 11, maybe 12%. And this is basically because the memory system is just getting hit really hard. Now, I'm assuming, of course, that this would be a lot of threads being hit simultaneously, and it's of course very difficult to know if this is going to be a final problem, because ultimately these chips are not ready to launch yet. We're going to know a lot more about this by the end of Q1 next year, I suspect. Remember that the desktop parts for Zen 5 are a very different beast to the server, so yeah, we'll keep an eye out for this. 2024 is certainly shaping up to be a very interesting year. We've got a lot of games, of course, coming out next year, which honestly look really cool across all of the different platforms. But in terms of actual product releases for hardware, if you're a PC gamer anyway, I think next year will actually be a very good year indeed. RDNA 4 and Intel's Battle Mage actually I think will be quite compelling for many folks who don't want to drop like, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 on a graphics card. And I have to admit, Zen 5, yes, I suspect will be very interesting, but I am also hoping that Intel themselves are going to be very competitive with, for example, Arrow Lake going forward as well. Hopefully I'll have an update for you guys regarding Arrow Lake coming pretty soon, but I think that's just about it for this particular video. One last thing, over the next couple of days I will be launching another YouTube channel. I'm thinking at this point I'm just going to call the channel my personal name, because I can't actually think of anything better to call it, if I'm honest with you. I'm very, very creative. And it's going to be very different. It's not going to be technology focused, really. Maybe I'll talk about the odd retro game here or there, but it's largely going to be focused on the gym, working out, talking about a lot of diet and health stuff, mental health stuff, a lot of just life things, to be honest with you guys. I don't know how frequently I'll update that channel. It's not going to be to impact RGT at all. It's going to be definitely much more of a fun project, but if you're interested in more than just tech, of course, you can follow along. I will do a formal announcement on this channel, and of course Twitter and all the other stuff as well. So yeah, with that said, have a good day, take care of yourselves, bye for now.